Hey, everybody out there, you're tuned in to 91.8 The Fan. You're in my corner, and I have a very special guest in the corner, which I met at a really awesome event here in Vegas. Would you like to unveil your not so secret identity?
Yeah, so this is David Jaffe from the Bartlett Jones Supernatural Detective Agency.
And we're really excited to have you on the show. I mean, this was really cool for me because, after the PlayStation experience, I got to kind of go home and my ride who picked me up was my brother, and I got to be like, guess who I met today? And we have like this 11-year difference, and he's kind of out of video games now. And I'm like, do you remember that old game we used to play on PlayStation? That it had the cars and they exploded, and I was trying to lead into it, and he was like, oh God, what was that? The one with the ice cream truck, and he's like, "Oh my God, what?" And I haven't seen him that excited in like years.
Oh wow, okay, well that's cool. That's pretty awesome. I'm glad you guys had that that time when you guys were playing it together. That's always the one of the best things we always hear is when people tell us how they kind of had these great moments with family and friends when they played stuff that we worked on. That's cool.
I mean, for me, that was the one game I could beat him in, so that was a big deal.
Right? Oh, yeah, that is a big deal. That's good. That's good.
Because, in Tekken, he would just spam the same move over and over, and I'd be dead. So,
Nice. What do you remember? What car you used?
oh, I definitely used the clown.
Okay.
I, I,
Okay.
I was the ice cream truck all the way,
Nice.
because it had the great melody that played.
Yep.
Um, him on the other hand, I'm trying to remember what car he was. I know it had a gun on the front of its hood,
They all
which
did.
I know
They all
like
did, you know.
that's not very helpful, but it was more of
No.
a sleek car.
Oh, okay. It's probably there was like something called Crimson Fury was a car. There was like a red sports car.
Yeah, that was it. That was
Cool.
definitely it. He
Nice.
he would always use that. So memories.
Yes. Geez.
But I met you at the PlayStation Experience event, and you guys were actually, willing to put out there "Drawn to Death." I believe it was a pre-alpha, and
Yeah.
kudos for doing that, by the way.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, it's. I mean, we're I mean, we're really proud of the title. I mean, it's kind of like what's weird about it is because of the art style of it is such. I mean, the whole thing is set in this kid's notebook. He's not some pro artist. He's clearly a just a like an average everyday kid who's just kind of doodling in class to pass the time while he's bored while his teacher kind of yammers on and stuff. And so there's an intention behind the art style where you look at it and it's not meant to look like um, Nathan Drake on Uncharted 4 on PS4 coming out, right? It's meant to be very rough around the edges, and sometimes it's hard to know when that's the intended style, and sometimes that's because we're pre-alpha. So we figured we just put it out there, and I mean, it's a different time than it used to be, where you held everything close to the vest and uh, you waited for just the exact right moments when you kind of had a great PR plan mapped out. It's like we're going to reveal this weapon on this day, and games are so much more organic and you know ongoing now. Whether you're talking about a service-based game or you're talking about just a game that continues to live with DLC or fan community, the idea of sort of holding that information until just the right moment kind of seems, in a lot of ways, at least for a lot of games these days, very archaic. So we were happy to just get it out there and get feedback. And we got back to the studio the next Monday, and we started working on a lot of that feedback that we heard from fans only a couple of days earlier in Vegas. So it was a wonderful experience for us.
So then it was definitely very positive. You didn't
Oh
really
my
find it
God.
to be a negative experience.
God, no, no, no. It was great for the game, great for the team. It was great to get the title out there, and it's always fun to kind of go out there with your very early title, and a title that clearly was never designed to sort of go head to head visually with the production value of like the quadruple A juggernauts, and still have a lot of people come up to you and say, "Hey, I had a lot more fun playing y'all's game than I did this game that looked stunning, but it was really kind of boring after about 10 minutes of playtime." So that's, I mean, we always hope everybody does well. It's a hard business and it's hard to just get a game shipped. So you never want anyone to fail, but it's always fun to know that, when you find that core essence of what your game is, and in our case, it's really the spirit of the gameplay, that when the gamers respond to that and they kind of validate that goal that you've had as a studio, it's always fun to hear them kind of come back and validate that and make you feel like, okay, we're on the right track.
Well, now the neat thing when I got the chance to sit down and play it is I didn't really play it so much as I tried to figure out what are all the different things I could do. Because
Yeah,
for those of you who weren't there, there was a sheet of like all the controls, and you had about maybe 5 or so minutes, maybe 10 minutes to look it over. And you can look at a sheet of how to do something, but I learned kinetically. I have to do it.
mhm,
So I was trying to be like, can I get on this building? Can I do this? I don't think I got a single kill, but I
right.
was just so kind of immersed in the world because it's so raw and unique.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I mean, I'm not a big fan of tutorials and things like that. I like just jumping in and playing and figuring it out as I go. And I think a lot of games have gotten bogged down these days with so much hand holding that I think the heart is in the right place. You want to make sure your user has an idea of what to do, but at the same time, it actually begins to hurt the play experience if that's most of what you're doing is reading tutorial messages. So yeah, jumping in and just playing is the way I like to do it as well. And then the world, man, I'll tell you, out of all the games I've worked on, this is kind of the world that I find most appealing and the one that I'm just super interested in exploring in a variety of ways, assuming sort of the game does well. Because there's so much material about this kid's his personal life and the life of these characters that live inside this notebook and sort of how those two worlds sometimes collide. And it's a really cool space for a new IP for us, and we're just jazzed to be playing in it.
Well, what I liked as a gamer is it felt very uninhibited. Like it didn't feel like the media or anybody had touched it and been like, "You need to do your game like this. Its characters need to be dressed like this, and it needs to do this." It was just whatever you wanted it to be. There was a
Yeah.
fantasy like thing to it, and I liked that it didn't feel like you guys were holding back because, oh, what if somebody gets offended or something?
No, I mean, I would hate unless someone is just hypersensitive and looking to be offended. I would hate to think we're making choices that offend people just to offend.
Mhm.
That's never, we're not mean people. That's not the goal. But yeah, I mean, one of the reasons, we shopped the game around to a number of publishers and had a good deal of interest. But I'd worked with Sony forever from the beginning of my career. And one of the reasons, probably the main reason that we wanted to say let's do this with Sony if they would be willing to work with us on this, and we were fortunate that they were, was really just that freedom that you're talking about. It's just there's a real sense of yes, games are products and they're commercial endeavors, and you want to make a return and you want to make a profit. But there's very much a balance to that, with Scott Rhodey and Shuhei Yoshida and the whole team in general at Sony PlayStation. That the medium is just absolutely artistic and it's rich with potential to explore all kinds of mechanics and settings and so yeah, I mean Sony's been great as a collaborator and a supporter and making sure that the game was able to be that you as a player were able to sort of pick up on that sense of lack of inhibition of the development team, because that's absolutely what we were hoping you'd pick up on. So it's really cool to hear you say that.
Oh, well, I'm glad that I was able to get that from the game because I'm horrible at shooters. I'll just outright
Mm-hmm.
say it. I'm more of a
Right.
strategic RPG person, but I still really wanted to play more. That's the one thing is replayability. I remember at the end you asked like on a scale of 1 to 10, replayability, how much you enjoyed yourself, things like that. And that was my highest score because I just wanted to get in and dig deeper and see if there was any more or maybe down the line if there would be story or what have you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And again, that's what I mean about sort of the world. We're a really small team and we're sort of launching the universe, called Drawn to Death. And I've always been careful. I was careful on God of War 1 as well when people would ask about sequels when we were still in development of the first game. And it's like, it's so presumptuous. I think you should just count yourself lucky that you're being funded to make a game, and you be grateful that you're working with people who are capable of taking what you have in your head and making it 1,000 times better, and everything else is just gravy. Okay, I was trying to be good with the language. I'm sorry. Oh well. You got a button. You caught me, I think. But yeah, I mean, everything else is just gravy, and so the idea of saying, oh, we're building the foundations of an IP and we're going to do RPGs with it, those are wonderful fantasies to have while you're driving home from work, after a long week. But as rich as I think the world is, end of the day, right now, all we have to do is just focus on that core experience. But yeah, I'd be lying if I were to say I'd never thought about all kinds of amazing stories that we could tell in this world. And in fact, even the stuff we had there at PSX, there were absolutely places you could look in the level design and the storytelling of the level design and start to learn a lot about who this artist is who's actually drawing this world, and the characters who inhabit it. So it's definitely something we'd like to do, but we're trying to keep our eye totally on the ball, which is the shooter aspect of the game and sort of introducing the world to players, and then we'll see what happens.
Now, I'm sort of curious, what was one of the major things that you heard in terms of feedback from the fans at PlayStation Experience?
I think I mean we probably came home with like 600 line items, because after every group of 8 played the game, and it's a 4-player game, but we had 2 groups playing at the same time. We invited them back to sit with myself and other members of the development team and just talk to them about, hey, what was working, what was not working. And so we got lots of great feedback. Probably one of the most recurring things that kept coming up was just sort of the necessity on our part to communicate the mechanics of the game better. So we would have people asking us, hey, could you guys put a melee button in, is the one I remember a lot. And it's like, dude, there is a melee button. But that's not that guy's fault. That was the fault of us as a developer for just sort of not making clear what needed to be more clear. So I think, the game is, at least we hope, but we're building the game to be very deep and nuanced, and there's lots of relationships between characters, not just in story, but how they come through in the mechanics of the gameplay, where if you pick a certain character, he'll respond to another character on the battlefield very different in terms of attack mechanics and defense mechanics than he will another character. And a lot of the work that we have in front of us over the next months is just to figure out how to communicate that depth. One of the mistakes I made on the last game I worked on, which was Twisted Metal for PS3, is we had built a very deep end of the swimming pool, is what I like to say, but we hadn't built a very good shallow entrance to the pool. And so unless you were a really hardcore Twisted Metal player, you kind of came in and you missed a lot of the nuance and depth that we'd put in there. And so we didn't want to make that mistake again. And so what we learned at PSX is we're doing a better job than we did on Twisted, but we still have a lot of work to do to really make it clear to players that the game is much more than just run around and pull a trigger and shoot things. There's a lot more nuance and depth and strategy there.
Well, there definitely was strategy. I like the fact that, it almost had like a rock, paper, scissors strategy, your character was like strong against one character but weak against another.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, the rock paper scissors thing is always kind of, we have debates about it here at the office, because what I'm hoping we can do is have that come out of that the player doesn't perceive it like as a class-based thing, but more of a character-based thing. So a good example of that would be uh, okay, here an example would be this character we have called Johnny Savage, who has this. He's kind of like a punk character, and he's got this demonic guitar that he plays, and he summons demons when he plays the guitar. And then there's this other character called Diablo Tijuana, and she's this sort of demonic infused character herself. And if you happen to use that attack on her, one of the demon summoners, she can actually absorb the attack and it makes her stronger. And so you want to be careful not to use it on her. And what we didn't want to do is identify her as a certain kind of class and say, oh, this class can counter the guitar player's class. And it started to feel very dry and emotionless. And we wanted it to be built more into the story. It's like, well, she's born of demons, and his weapon was sort of forged by demons in hell, and that's why there's this relationship between them, and that's why those weapons react the way they do when they come together. And so we're really trying to balance sort of the necessity to understand mechanics at a glance, which is where sort of the rock paper scissors definition comes in, which is necessary, but at the same time make sure it's infused with enough story that it doesn't just feel arbitrary, but it feels like it's actually part of the fabric of the universe.
Well, I will say I really did love the female character. That was the character I played. Somebody next to me saw that I had the teddy bear guy and was like, "Do you want to
Right.
switch?" And I was like, "Okay, whatever. It doesn't matter to me." But then I got a chance to play her, and I like a lot of her weapons. Her weapons are really cool.
Yeah, I love her weapons. And I'll tell you something. I mean, I have 2 daughters now, and it was just it was never on my radar in the past. It wasn't until I had kids, and they both happened to be girls, where it was like they started wanting, and that's not the reason Diablo Tijuana is a female character, but it was definitely a sense of like opening my eyes to the fact that it's like, holy cow, you know, it's absurd that we don't have more of a diverse mix of characters in a lot of the games that I've worked on, just because it's just, I'm very myopic. I have, my worldview. And then to see them come in and say, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. I sit there right beside her when she plays Grand Theft Auto, but I have an 11-year-old and I play Grand Theft Auto with her sometimes. And she's just like, where's the girl character? And I'm like, you know what? It's absolutely true. There's no women in Grand Theft Auto that you can actually play as the protagonist. And so from Diablo Tijuana, we have a lot of diversity of the casting, and that's not meant to be sort of a checkbox on a box like, oh, look how diverse our cast is, but it is just more. It was really cool to see lots of different people coming together and playing the game at PSX and finding mechanically, but also conceptually, with the look of the characters, the kinds of characters they liked. And it was really cool to see different diverse audiences at the show gravitate towards certain characters that other ones wanted nothing to do with at all. And I think a lot of that was because I think we've opened that net wider to sort of our character creation process. And so that's been really fun for us.
Well, I will say I think it's fine that you play, Grand Theft Auto with your daughter.
Yeah,
I used to work at a game store about 4 or 5 years ago, that sadly is out of business, but like they could rent any game they wanted, and there was like this little 8-year-old, and he played any game. And I asked his dad once, are you looking for a kid-friendly game? And he's like, no, he knows the difference between fact and fiction, so he's fine.
exactly.
I was like,
Exactly. And,
yeah.
and I'm always saying that to my kids, and they're like, dude, we know, we know, we know. But I had my kids when they were like, gosh, they're 11 and 9 now, so they must have been about 8 and 6, and they were on the set of the Twisted Metal live movies, and they were watching fake blood by the gallon just being, exploded all over the soundstage floor. And then right afterwards, the guy who was playing Sweet Tooth, would come over and take his mask off and talk to my kids about, he had his crazy adventures as a bodybuilder. So they're always reminding me. It's like, dude, we know this is just fantasy. I'm not worried about it. So, but I still want to sit and play with him. I wouldn't turn her loose in the world of what is it now? 5 was set in was it Liberty City? Wasn't 5, was it? Where was 5 set?
Oh God, that's a good question. Grand Theft Auto is not my forte, to be
Well,
quite.
I wouldn't let her loose on the streets of San Andreas or Liberty City or any of those places without me sitting next to her. She's still too young for that, I think.
Fair enough. And for any of the listeners out there, we're going to take a short break here on 91.8 The Fan. Don't go anywhere because our special guest isn't. Keep it tuned to your favorite station. Hey, everybody out there, you're still tuned in to 91.8 The Fan, and my special guest is still here, alive and breathing.
Yes.
At least I hope so.
Well,
Okay, that's good.
yes.
But yeah, so I'm really excited for John to Death, and I feel like a lot of the fans are too. I was bombarded with questions when I came back. Is it jarring to play? Because a lot of people told me the trailer made it look like it would be really hard to play because it's so white, and I said actually no, it was really easy to play, and so a lot of the staff and a lot of the fans are looking forward to it.
Yeah, I heard people. I mean, we've done a lot of work on that. This is a. I should never open a piece of gum before I do this. Hang on.
I've got gummies right here. I can join you.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, no, there was a lot of work that went in, especially before PSX, into the lighting and the shadows, and sort of making sure that the whiteness, which is sort of so important to sort of the fiction of the world because it is set in a notebook. That it still made the game, playability is number one. And so we still have work to do on popping characters and pickups and things like that visually. But yeah, we heard people just like you. We heard people who saw the trailer and said, "Oh, it's just too stark. It's too white." It's very different. Like I said, we talked to everybody. They came out of the booth after they played at PSX. Not one person complained about, "Oh, I can't look at this game. It's too white." So, in fact, if anything, it's an advantage because it does let us use color more strategically than most games. So we can really draw the eye to characters that you're fighting, or again, icons or pickups or things in the environment that we really want to bring your attention to. So, we're always looking for that. I mean, we know we've picked an art style that cuts both ways. But for now, that particular challenge has proven to be more of an advantage than anything else.
Well, now, that dreaded question for the fans, when can they expect to get their hands on the game?
No, that's a great question. I don't. We've been talking to Sony a little bit after PSX about, are we going to be at this show or are we going to be at that show? We certainly, we're hoping we're fortunate enough that Sony picks this as a title that they want to have in the queue to make the rounds, whether you're talking E3 or PAX or Comic Con or WonderCon or whatever. But in terms of actual release, we haven't announced anything yet, but it's not it's early access is not way far off in the distance. It's not like we're going to go away for a year and a half and you won't hear from us again until we're ready to launch. It's definitely on the medium horizon. It's not too far out for early access.
Awesome. I mean, that's exciting for me. As I said, earlier in the interview, I really just want to get in and play more, even if I die every time. I just
Right.
want to see more.
Good. Well, hopefully, all the levels and characters as we reveal more, you'll stay excited. That's great to hear.
And for the fans out there that want to keep up to date on the game's progress and stuff like that, is there anywhere like on the internet that they can do that, like social media or websites?
Yeah, I mean, there is drawntodeath.com, which they can sign up for the Drawn to Death forums where, people who know me and some members of the team. I mean, I'm super active on Twitter and in our Facebook page, the Bartlett Jones Supernatural Detective Agency is our name, and then Drawn to Death is the name of the game, and then David Scott Jaffe at Twitter. So yeah, I mean, anywhere and everywhere, we're out there trumpeting the game and soliciting feedback directly from players about all kinds of things. We just had a YouTube video go up last week or the week before, going to players and talking about ranked mode versus unranked mode and stuff. So I'm not one of these developers. It's like help us make the game. I kind of feel like whenever someone puts entertainment product in front of me as a fan, I want to know that that's been made by professionals who have a vision. So it's not like we're just like, we don't know what we're doing, help us make this thing. But at the same time, we definitely are always interested in feedback and thoughts. And so we're crazy soliciting that. So hopefully, yeah, if anyone's listening and it sounds like a game they might be interested in, come to drawingtodeath.com and jump into the conversation with us.
Awesome. And since we're nearing the end of this interview, I was wondering if you'd be willing to participate in a 91.8 The Fan tradition.
I don't know. Depends what it is.
We basically ask if you'd be willing to do a radio bump for us or read a line for us.
Depends what it is.
You basically are supposed to say, hello, my name is, I do this. You can say whatever you want, and you're tuned into 91.8 The Fan.
Okay, let's try it. You ready?
Yep.
Hey, this is David Jaffe, Game Director of the Bartlett Jones Supernatural Detective Agency, and you are tuned into 91.8 The Fan.
God, you got that better than some voice actors I've had on the site.
Uh-oh.
I don't have a script.
No.
Numbers.
Yes, I need to prepare. What's my motivation?
But no, thank you so much. Is there anything else you'd like to tell the listeners out there? Any words of wisdom, dating advice, predictions for the end of the world?
Wow, those are, what, we could talk for hours about all of those things. No, gosh. Hey, hang on. She's asking if there's anything I want to tell their listeners before I get off. Do you have any? She wants to know if we have any dating advice or advice for the end of the world.
Advice for the end of the world?
Yeah, Steve's going to tell us. Steve's our art director. What's that?
Shoes.
Steve says comfortable shoes. And Tobin says change of underwear. And so there you go. You have nice shoes and underwear, and if you die, you'll be okay.
Good advice for both the end of the world and dating.
Yes, that's right. Steve says that's advice for dating and for the end of the world. And if you've been on some dates like I have, you can't tell the difference.
Well, he's got a good point. So thank you very much to
Thank you very
and your
much.
team.
Appreciate it. And thanks for the opportunity to talk about our game. I appreciate that.
Definitely. And for any of the fans out there that missed any of this interview, don't fret. You can find it on the website within the next few days. So keep your eyes peeled to 918thefan.com and your ears tuned to 91.8 The Fan, where we play everything you want and nothing you don't.